right, good morning, Mom and
Good
Dad.
morning.
Morning.
My mom and dad are joining us today because my dad lives with Parkinson's, and of course, my mom supports him. And given that we're studying progressive chronic neurological conditions this week, I thought it would be great to give you a insider's perspective on the patient experience and the family experience of living with one of these conditions. So this is my mom. I've given them a couple questions and they've prepared what they wanted to say ahead of time. So we're recording it because, like I said, my dad has had his second DBS surgery. And during class on Tuesday morning, they're going to be going and getting the current turned on. So you'll hear more about DBS. One of your classmates will present to you at the end of class on that. But I'm going to mostly turn the floor over to them outside of me, just asking the questions. And so, Mom, you all ready?
I am ready.
Okay, so we are going to begin. My mom's going to begin. And the question I've asked my mom to answer is to provide a bit of context. You don't know either of my parents nor their background, but it's really hard to appreciate the impact of a chronic condition if you don't really understand who people were before they began living with it. And so I've asked her to give you a bit of a context for who they are, what they've done. And then as Dad begins to describe his life with Parkinson's and Mom comes alongside him, you'll have a bit of an understanding as to their context and the meaning of the experience. So Mom, I've asked you to describe the context. So can you give a bit of an intro to who you are, what you've spent your time doing in the past, so that students can appreciate where you're coming from as you begin to speak about Parkinson's?
Okay, I'm going to divide this into two segments, pre-retirement and post-retirement. So first of all, pre-retirement, which takes in the years 1970 to 2003. Dean and I are both teachers, he with a PhD and myself with a master's degree. We spent 6 years teaching in West Malaysia in the 70s and 80s, as well as raising our daughter, your professor, and our son. For 2 summers while our children were still in high school, we returned to Malaysia to visit local friends there. In 1997, Dean and I accepted teaching assignments in Saudi Arabia for 2 years, following this up with 4 years in the United Arab Emirates, coming home finally in 2003 when we started having grandchildren. Both of our children were able to visit us in Saudi Arabia as singles and then again with their spouses when we were teaching in the United Arab Emirates. Post-retirement, that takes us from 2003 to the present. I continued doing some subbing, and Dean and I both obtained our real estate licenses and dabbled in that whenever we were not traveling or accepting short-term assignments overseas. 3 or 4 significant times for us were, number one, after the Asian tsunami of December 2006, we accepted a short-term 1-month assignment with Food for the Hungry Canada, and they sent us to Banda Aceh, Indonesia, very near the epicenter of the earthquake that caused all that devastation. Dean and I have retained a reasonable grasp of the Indonesian language from our years in Malaysia, and Dean is very skilled at logistics. So we were put in charge of a large home that housed incoming volunteer doctors and nurses from all over the world. My second example, in the fall of 2007 and again in 2008, we responded to a call from an international church in Cairo, Egypt, to help out with the Sudanese refugee situation there. Sudanese children, most of whom were Christians, were denied entrance to any Muslim government schools in Cairo. So their parents were doing their best to educate them, but needed some professional help. Cambridge University in England was offering a teaching certificate to any refugee teacher meeting certain requirements. So Dean and I were there to help facilitate that. In 2011, we were successful in co-sponsoring one of our Sudanese teachers in Cairo, along with his family, to emigrate to Canada. That has been an extremely rewarding experience for us as we continue to be involved with this lovely family who have adapted to their new home here in Abbotsford very well. My third example, in 2015, we went to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to assist in the homeschooling of our 3 grandchildren for a month while their parents, your professor and her husband, were fully occupied with an organization called Hope for Cora that I'm sure your teachers told you about. My fourth example, we returned in 2016 to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to help hire teachers and set up an after-school tutoring program with Hope for Cora. These 4 examples are samples of what Dean and I hoped to continue responding to well into our senior years. Sorry, we'll be physically unable to do so due to Parkinson's. So this represents a loss to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mom. Hi, Dad.
Hi, Deb.
Thank you for joining us. I can see I'm missing your chin a bit. Can you put it down just a bit? Because on my computer, yeah, perfect. That's great. That's great. Okay. Dad, I'm going to ask you a few questions. I think I have 5 or 6 and you've prepared your responses. Mom, thank you so much for that introduction. So helpful. My mom and dad have led very full, productive lives and continue to lead full lives, just different ones. Okay, Dad, we would really appreciate you telling us a bit about the story of your diagnosis. So when you were diagnosed, what brought you to the doctor? A couple other questions around that.
I first became aware that something was wrong with me on a holiday we took to New Zealand in 2011. We had rented a car that had no cruise control, and I couldn't keep my right foot steady on the accelerator. I thought it was just muscle fatigue, but it continued through the whole holiday of 6 weeks, the kind of jumping forward and not smooth travel of our car. 2 years later, I was diagnosed on my 65th birthday in 2013 with Parkinson's disease. I was relieved in one sense to find out that what was wrong with me had a name, but I had to investigate what Parkinson's really was all about.
Dad, what are the primary ways in which Parkinson's has impacted your life?
I can't stop shaking while I'm awake. It interferes, for example, with my shaving. I use a manual straight blade, straight edge.
Yeah.
And that helps to kind of get a clean cut, a clean mark along my beard. But it's very difficult to shave because my hand is just going like that.
I'm going to have to help him.
So it interferes, but it also distracts. For example, if I'm trying to carry on a conversation with my 4 body limbs moving, it's distracting to me. Secondly, the loss of relaxation. You say, oh, I think I'll just sit down and read a book. If I sit down to read something, you can imagine what it's like trying to follow on the line of a page. Now I have a book holder, but even when I use that, my body limb parts are moving around, and it interferes with trying to follow what I'm reading. Thirdly, I follow a regimen more strongly than I used to. For example, when I go to bed, I take pills at 9. I do exercises to stretch and eliminate the cramp in my foot and my feet. And then I quickly get into bed and lie as still as I can and hope the tremors will die down in a few minutes so that I can actually fall into sleep. Those are 3 examples.
Those are great examples. Such big impacts in the simple things of life. Hey, Dad.
Yeah.
So number 4, what are the 3 most significant losses you have faced with Parkinson's?
Well, I mentioned some difficulties in question 3, so I'm only going to mention one significant loss. That is what I perceive to be a loss of travel, a loss to traveling. I used to say at the beginning of Parkinson's, we do what we can while we can. And it was easy for that to roll off my tongue. We did, for example, climbed Everest Base Camp. We didn't quite make it there. We did it with you and your husband and 3 of our grandkids. We did 2 trips to Spain to do the El Camino Trail in 2017 and 2018. We did 325K the first year, 225K the second year. We were all set to do it in the fall of 2019 to finish off the trek when Mom got cancer, breast cancer. So with 2 operations to remove a lump and lymph nodes, 6 months of chemotherapy, and a month of radiation, we got us to the end of January of 2020, and then the pandemic hit in March. So we've been unable to finish that, and we will likely not be able to do that. Strong likelihood we won't be able to do that. And then we went down and up the Grand Canyon 4 times since I was diagnosed with Parkinson's. The 4th time was with you, Tam, and our son, Steph. And we went down from the South Rim, down 4,800 vertical feet, and back up 28K, 26K for me. I went to the river. You actually went to Phantom Ranch and back, but we did that all in one day. But now, even without COVID, I have no desire to really do any more hiking. To that extent, because I realized that it would be too difficult.
Class, I'm just going to insert a small thing here because it didn't really come out in the introduction, but it did there, Dad. You touched on it, which is just the importance of activity to you. In your younger years, you skied a lot, Dad. You were a part of the Alberta ski team as a youth. You grew up in Jasper, and then you were very physical. My mom and dad made my brother and I run long distances growing up. Physical activity and having that as part of their life, doing multiple treks in Nepal. Dad touched on the Everest Base Camp, which was the most recent one, but the El Camino Trail that you guys did in 2017, 2018, walking and long walking, and then more recently long bike rides for you with your e-bikes. That's been a significant source of joy and relaxation and memory making for you amidst your travel, and giving you kind of destinations to go to in addition to your work overseas in your volunteerism. And so so it's no small thing for you to say that travel, that your disease has impacted travel and that it's been a significant loss. Though you continue to walk, I know you and Mom both do between 5 and 10K every single day to keep yourself moving. How the strain it puts on you is significant. And I feel that with you. My next question for you, because I know there is this as well. What are the unexpected gifts of Parkinson's for you?
One that I mentioned is that I enjoy a simple life, visiting with family, daily walks of 7K plus, and being with my wife and playing cards and watching TV. Secondly, I enjoy my relationship with God. I have my daily devotional in the morning, but especially in the evening when I'm lying in my bed and I'm trying to go to sleep, I enjoy a beautiful communion with Him, where I'm citing scripture, claiming promises, and generally asking Him, please help me to lie still so that I can go to sleep. Third, possibility. The third gift is the possibility that 2 DBS surgeries have had holes drilled in both sides of my forehead and implants put in there. And I get the second one turned on, the right side turned on this coming Tuesday, as Tam has mentioned. And I'm hopeful of what those 2 surgeries can do for me, allowing me to continue to lead as normal a life as possible. Fourth, we joined a Parkinson's disease support group, and we receive encouragement from them, and we give out encouragement to them. And we see examples of tremendous courage and character displayed in both people with Parkinson's and their caregivers. I'll say now about that.
Finally, so if you have anything additional to add at the end, and I haven't asked the question, please do. But the last question I asked, and this is bringing it back to my students, what is one piece of insight you would like to leave for these young adults who will be caring for patients with Parkinson's? What is something you think they need to remember or keep in mind that they might not know intuitively?
Well, if you look at somebody with Parkinson's or you look at their caregiver, realize it takes tremendous courage to remain positive and optimistic about the future. And my Christian faith makes a huge difference in that regard. But when you see they can do little and they'll be able to do less in the month or 2 ahead, and that's the way it's going to be on that kind of trajectory. It takes tremendous courage for them and for their caregivers to remain optimistic. Secondly, that inside a broken exterior is a person who God says, and I say, is important.
Could I just add something to that, Tam?
Yeah, maybe can you turn? Thank you,
Yeah.
Dad.
Yeah. I certainly learned this by joining the Parkinson's group, that don't assume because someone has lost the ability to communicate well, that their brain is not functioning.
Mm.
We have learned that Dean used to play cribbage with one man who he could hardly understand a word he said. And this guy regularly phones and has a conversation with Dean, and 50% of it, Dean has to guess what he's saying. But he's very intelligent. He organizes these crib tournaments at his house. So don't assume because somebody isn't speaking well that their brain is gone. I learned that. And talk to the person, you know, as a nurse, you could actually talk to them, even though it's more comfortable to talk to their caregiver. Yeah. Acknowledge who they are.
Great advice. Great advice. Well, I want to thank you both for taking the time to prepare words that would encourage and inspire and enlighten us. You're my mom and dad, and I love you. And I've seen you walk this journey with courage and with as much positivity as anybody does as they face the obstacles that you faced. So thank you for your
Thank you,
model.
Janet.
Thank you for taking the time to share with my students. And we will pray for you on Tuesday morning as we come together in class,
Oh, that's lovely.
for the as the current goes on, and as you have endured much, both of you, and I know you have high hope for that morning and the mornings ahead. We will pray for encouragement for you that morning. But more, I just want to say thank you for walking this out authentically and vulnerably. It makes a real difference. I think everybody has a trajectory of life, and this is the path and the journey God has you on. But you've walked it very authentically, and that makes a big difference as you open up your life and you give us an inside track on the gifts, but the losses too. It just helps us treat patients and people around us with more dignity, and that's important. That is a gift that you give us that we can also pay forward. So thank you for that.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thanks
Deb.
for letting us be a part of your class.
Yeah.
I wish I could meet all your students.
Maybe you will one day. You can come back in fourth year. All right.
Yay.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.